actually don't know what I'm doing.
That's just the way of it at this point.
I don't understand.
Oh, I hit escape. Hey! New for 2018. They fixed it.
So I'll have to cut that part out.
Yes, I guess you will.
All right, so we're back. We've obviously got a little bit better equipment. It might not be obvious to some of you, but hopefully in the sound quality and potentially in the video quality, you guys can notice. But I saw something online, and it got me thinking about an episode that I would really like to talk about, and so I'm bringing it to you now. It turns out that UPS at some point had the genius idea that, hey, we need to make our routes more efficient. And one of the things that our drivers spend the most time doing is not running packages back and forth. Yeah, they do that, but that's mission critical. But when they're constantly waiting to make left turns. And what they actually did is they went through and reworked all of their UPS routes to eliminate as many left turns as possible. And it got me to kind of thinking, what are those left turns for us? What are the things that we've eliminated in our processes over the couple, the 5 years that we've been in business to make ourselves more efficient? Because I know there's a lot of them, but sometimes it's hard to remember what they all are. What are your thoughts?
Well, right off the bat, first thing comes to mind is a HASP sharing. We work as a cloud-based sort of a office. So, when we first started out, we didn't have any kind of ability to share the HASP. So it was a big chunk of our time where I would work a shift and then I had to physically drive to your house and hand you the HASP so that you could then work the next shift. And then when you were done, you had to drive it back to me so that I could work the following day. And that was a game changer.
That was really about maximizing that investment, right? That software is expensive, and we wanted to get started as cheaply as possible. I think when we started, we had like $1,500.
Yeah, about that.
Something like that, enough to put food on the table for a couple of weeks, and that was about it. That's where we were, and we wanted to make sure that software is being used all the time, and so we really did. Not only did we share the HASP, but we offset our working hours to make sure that it was being used as much as possible in those times. And it was a great thing at the time, but man, some of those nights driving down that road at 2 o'clock in the morning, they got pretty dicey. And I saw a lot of wildlife, especially halfway between my house, which was suburban, and yours, which was on the other side, suburban. So I had to drive through all of the rural
from city to city. Yeah. There were times where I would just lay on the horn while I'm driving through a stand of trees because I know that there are deer constantly crossing through there, and I'm going 30 miles an hour and just blaring a horn going down the road, just trying to make sure everything steps aside before I get there.
Right. And some people who have started and who use those HASPs, if they start for themselves, might understand the very visceral attachment you end up to get into that little USB stick, because it's like your livelihood in your hands. And particularly at the beginning, every day counts that you get off that thing. And it's just like having a piece of heavy equipment where if that thing breaks down or is not running, that's your livelihood just melting away on you. So, there was never a time when I just tossed that thing on the seat. It was always attached to something on the keychain. We had a whole procedure. But that was, when we got into the cloud, and for those of you listening at home, we use our own homebrew cloud system. We don't use SDS Edge. We don't use what's the other one? Cloud Synergistics. We demoed both of them. Well, actually, we haven't demoed SDS Edge, but we have demoed Cloud Synergistics, and the performance was good, but not any better than what we're getting for considerably less money on our own.
Right. The difference there really is that their system is always on, and it's being manned by IT all the time, whereas we turn ours on and off, so we're paying by the hour as opposed to an always on system. And if something goes down, you have to get in touch with tech support and deal with it that way.
Yeah, but I don't want to stray too much, but that was our thing, like making that jump between the okay, we're working locally, we're sharing files back and forth, we're stopping a model and then starting a model, to a true cloud-based system where, you know, we can both jump in at the same time and be working on the same project. We can bring people from other companies in. That was a big deal for us. And still, like, sometimes we get clients because they're almost finished with something, but they need more help. And being able to offer that has been a big deal for us. And for it to not be a huge, you know, you don't have to send your HASP off to somebody. It's just, okay, you know, give me your IP address and we'll have you up in a few minutes. So that's always been nice. But along with that came specialization. As we hired people, we decided, okay, through trial and error, okay, we can't be training these people to do everything. And we made that mistake the first time.
Yep. Oh yeah. The first person that we hired full time not only didn't know how to use SDS, he wasn't a detailer. We had to train him to be a detailer. And, you know, right off the bat, we didn't have time to do a lot of the training, so we kind of threw him into it and just thought, you know, we'll do our work, we'll let him do what we think he can handle, and then we'll go back and look over his work, as opposed to kind of watching him and training him through a process. And it was a disaster. You know, it was nothing but sleepless nights for months, where, you know, he'd work the day and then one of us would spend the entire evening just going over his work, doing it over again, because we didn't have time to have him correct it the next day. It had to go out, you know.
Right.
And it really was difficult to get through any of those projects. And when we realized, you know, let's specialize and just have him working on scrubbing members or working on plans, and we're going to kind of watch him while he does that. And, you know, we're going to model and also do plans, but that way we can kind of keep closer tabs to make sure that the model is right. And, you know, it's much easier that way to get through that job and have a greater sense of this is going to come out correct, you know.
Right. And that training instantly got a lot easier by virtue of that. You know, we only had to teach them half as much. And when we started specializing too, we figured out that whole, okay, cleaning up the drawings is the least dangerous place that I can put a person, right?
Right.
Like, they have to almost be willfully malicious to mess something up at that point, assuming, as we do at this point, that all of the people watching this understand that that model has to be correct before you ever start scrubbing those drawings. Model has to be correct. And that's give me a second. My glasses are all like fucking bent. See, they're still crooked on my face, and this side needs to.
That's your face that's crooked. I'm sure the glasses are just fine.
That made it worse. That popping sound is not good.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you're just gonna snap them, and that'll be the end of that.
Yeah. But the virtue in specialization is not just the reduced training costs. It's that person becomes very, very efficient in whichever product they're using. You can also cut the costs of software by using those specialized stations. You know, if you've got just a drafting license instead of a full station, that's usually cheaper for both softwares. It's funny. I talk about softwares too. Like there's only two, right? Like there's other softwares, but they're in a different realm, and I wouldn't say that there are detailing houses using any of those. There are in-house fabricators using a lot of them, but I have not seen any detailing houses using them.
Right. They may have it, you know, they may have one of the other options as a side thing that they maybe pick up because they've got a fabricator that wants them to use that. You know, we've run into that where they've got to have this specific flavor of AutoCAD or something like that, you know.
Yeah.
But those are even few and far between.
Right. And there's not much that you can do about those, right? Like
Right.
they've got their way, and that's always going to be it. There's not too much for you to say. And I usually don't even bother when I go into a place like that and I see they've got this straightforward method that they're using. It's effective for them. It's, you know, I think I could be effective detailing for you too, but you seem happy with what you've got, and I'm not going to mess with it. I don't try to make that sale.
Right.
And in times when we haven't tried to make that sale and have still gotten it, it's usually ended badly for us. And that kind of transitions into our, you know, what I thought was the next one is letting the software do the work. If you're constantly working against this machine that you've got, trying to make it do something that it's not built to do, to change the way that it works, to make it look like your drawings used to look, that's a big one as far as left turns go. I mean, you can spend $1,000 training a guy for a week, or you can spend $50,000 making your detailers jump through hoops for their entire, you know, being. And a lot of it too is the mentality with some fabricators of, well, this is the way we've always done it.
Right. Right. That's always a harbinger of death when you hear this is the way we've always done it, you know. And it's like, well, it wasn't that long ago that the way you've always done it was with a tape measure and soapstone, but, you know, times change.
Yeah.
You have to do what's efficient. It doesn't matter how it's always been done. If there's a more efficient method out there, somebody is going to be hungrier than you and take your business. You know, you have to play to the efficiencies of the software. It's the whole point of getting it.
Well, that's it, you got to be careful though, because it's very in counter to what I think some detailers, who I would call bad detailers, use as an excuse for bad dimensioning, right? Like, just because the drawing outputs dimensions in one way, that doesn't make them right. It doesn't make it okay. There are reasons for a lot of this stuff, and a lot of those reasons are not, this is the way it's always been done. It's that there are actual legitimate causes for that. You know, we talk about it over and over again, like the brace points or the work points for braces, and why stub dimensions come from where they are, and why you
moment
don't.
plates is a constant one with you too.
Right. It's that class of thing though, where there is a reason for it to be done this way, and even if you have to fight with the software, that's the right way to do it.
Right.
And it was originally one of the things that set me off about this, was when it was still called X-Steel, is and I don't know if it still works this way, but when a whole group has holes of a different diameter, of a non-standard diameter, it points to one of the holes in the group and calls it as that different diameter or slot or whatever else. It doesn't point to the line. It doesn't point, you know, to the dimension line the way we like. It doesn't even cloud them the way SDS2 says, so you grab all of them. It just points to one and says, you know, 1 1/16 diameter. Well, okay, technically the shop only knows that that hole is different. And it's been years, right, since that. And I've started to kind of rethink it, right? Like on the same thing where we talked about retraining your staff, right? If these people are used to Tekla drawings and they're used to seeing that points to that one hole, and you just need to understand it's that whole, you know, that entire set of holes, then maybe it's not worth the time to go and recloud that, just because that's the way it's always been done. And that's what's technically correct, because these drawings really are for the shop. That's the most important thing, is that in the end, the shop can fabricate it. Now, that's not the only end. You know, there's a lot of shops, people who have come to me and said, oh, well, can you get rid of all these work point dimensions and all these extra dimensions that go off into stuff that I can't pull a tape to? And we always have to explain to them, not all of the dimensions on a drawing are for you. There are other people in the path of creating and checking and approving these drawings that want to see that information and that need to see it.
Right.
But you always kind of want to be thinking, this is something that's always driven me crazy. We get constantly inundated with proposals from offshore detailers, right? Oh, come work with us. And their profiles, almost exclusively, all of their stuff that they send to impress you are 3D models. And yeah, that's a great looking 3D model, but where are the drawings, right? Can you make that into like what's real and what's important? Can you produce a good shop drawing of it? Because that's the difference. Like, my value is not in being able to create a 3D model. We can train anybody to create a 3D model, but your value is to communicate that information to a guy with less knowledge of the building, less experience, bad working or bad lighting conditions, and a set of imperfect steel with imperfect tools. And can you make it so, given all of those challenges, he still produces the steel in a way that it's all going to fit together? And so we get these drawings from offshore detailers, and I don't want to malign all offshore detailers, but the ones that we get consistently are this way. They send us these 3D models, and I'm like, that is not a sale to me. I do not care. And our thing, like, we include a couple isometrics, but it's in a PDF that's 150 sheets of shop drawings of trusses and stairs and lintels and hung lintels and bracing, and here's how we present it, here's how it looks, and here's what your shop guys are going to have to work with.
Right. And when you're talking, that sort of thing, it boils down to, can you convey and present the information in a meaningful way so that the shop is able to do something with it? It can't just be this, are you fulfilling a BIM requirement? And, all right, the design team can verify that you're not going to hit something. Ultimately, somebody has to be able to produce from that, and that's something that it can vary from shop to shop as far as what it is that they need to see or they would like to see in order to be able to produce that drawing. And that kind of leads into something else that I've got as an idea for you is, we created a customer survey that we send out anytime that we pick up a new customer, and, they go through it and kind of give us their order of preferences as far as what their connection designs look like. Because, we've had this happen where they give us some standards, or sometimes they don't give us standards, and, they tell us, I like a bolted connection. Okay, well, that's great. There's different kinds of bolted connections. We've got some customers that they expect double bolted, all bolted clip angles. They want single bolted clip angles. They want it bolted to the supported member, to the supporting member. In certain circumstances, they would rather see a shear plate, and it allows us to kind of gauge what are their preferences throughout the different selection options that we have, so that we're able to work a little bit more autonomously. Because, the other thing you don't want to do is constantly be having to go back to the customer and showing them every single framing situation along the way. Say, what would you do here? What would you do here? What do you want to do for this? And having that survey put together really allows us to kind of gauge what their thoughts are on a broad spectrum of conditions, so that we can just refer to that throughout the job. And it really reduces the amount of phone calls and emails back and forth that have a higher risk of losing something in translation.
Yeah, and it works for both of us, right? It gives them the opportunity to share that information with us, and it forces them to think about the answers to these questions in advance. But on the other hand, too, later when the job's handed off to their third project manager, or they just forget what they told us, we go back and we say, listen, we sent you this thing for you to fill out. You filled it out, you signed to it, you agreed to it, and we did it that way. And yeah, of course we'll fix it to whatever standards you want, but first you may have to pay us for it, depending on how much time it is. And second, did you really mean it? Because somebody else in your organization or you at another time thought that what you told us then was correct. And forcing them to ask those questions to themselves is super important. It's almost like the contract terms in that way. Like even our contract terms tell them what they're going to be getting from us, so that they know kind of up front that, you know, you're going to get gather sheets, you're going to get the details, the plans not generated from contract drawings, all that stuff. But you're not getting a model file until we're paid. And there's a bunch of other stuff like that where we set out our expectations, and then we know that everybody understands them. And instead of later feeling that it was necessary for us to redo something at our own cost and to increase the amount of time it took, we've already communicated that ahead of time.
Right. Another issue that we have as far as, making those changes, it comes into play is changing gears. And when we used to work in-house in a fabrication shop, it became common practice for us to basically work on whatever the shop foreman came up with that day as, the issue of the day. Here's what's hot for me right now. Get this done right now. So,
Right.
We were constantly, you'd start a job and you begin laying out your anchor bolts. And before you could finish that anchor bolt drawing, he'd come up and say, hey, I need these roof frames and I need them right now. Stop what you're doing. Work on these roof frames. All right. So, all right, we're going to put that aside and not get that work out the door. Maybe, there's 15, 20 minutes left to do it, but hey, switch over and work on these roof frames. So now the roof frames take you the rest of the day, to finish up all of those and get those into the shop. But they didn't actually need them until the next day, and you never actually get back to those anchor bolt drawings. So now they're out a day later, And when we first started the detailing company, we kind of fell into that where whatever customer called and asked for something last, that was the hot job for us. So right. whoever was the last person to say my job is hot, their job was the only job that was hot. So we would shift around constantly, and it could be 10 minutes of working on something before the next person calls and says, hey, I need this. And go ahead.
I was going to say part of that was kind of my maturation as a project manager.
Right.
And one of the things that never works out for me is asking fabricators, hey, when do you need this done? Because the answer is almost always, well, as soon as possible. And that definition is really ridiculous, because it's like, okay, well, do you have it in a shop schedule on a day? Because there's a certain amount of things that I do not want the customer shop idle because I didn't get something done. I don't want them to have to send a separate truck to their supplier because I didn't get something done on time.
Right.
It's things like those. It's the ones where you need it on a concrete date because there is this thing going to happen if that date does not happen. And those are the things that I've begun to ask for, like what's going on so that I can understand how hot this is. And I've also got, kind of a mental inventory of how many times have you called me as if the building was on fire and you need this thing right away that you hadn't previously asked for. Because you do, like, there's a certain amount of those that you get before it's like, all right, every time you call me, it's the biggest emergency in the world. I can't always drop what I'm doing because it costs me money. Every time that I have you switch gears or have any of our people switch gears over something else, right. It really does drop. It's, it's simple. Like in Bluebeam, you've got 4 windows open, 3 splits, 6 sets of drawings, 2 RFIs. You got your model open, you're in the right view, and then I tell you, okay, can you go over and scrub these couple details and get this in for fabrication or produce this material list? And then all of that can disappear.
Yep. Yeah, it'll be something like, oh, how did you come up with this information? And now I've got to go hunting for it. And invariably, you're better off just closing Bluebeam and wiping out everything you had, because you were in all these little views, and I need to see a big plan.
That's one that I missed when I was thinking about this. But right now that you say it, one of our biggest was that everybody was figuring out the same information from the contract drawings 3 times over, because we weren't tracking it down. Like now, when you go to the architectural, go to A5.4 and pull a dimension from it and write it in, you're responsible to write, I got this dimension from A5.4 here, so that when I go back and I'm checking those drawings, I don't have to figure that out from scratch. I don't have to figure out that, hey, this section cut is actually worthless, and go to this one instead to get the information, or go find this on the architectural blow-up. All that information, ideally, is shown right in that structural drawing in the section, and I can go find that information very quickly and efficiently.
Yeah, that's something that's come to me as I've gotten more involved with, more of the, I do the modeling, but I don't necessarily produce the drawings so much anymore. So what I end up having to do is explain myself to many other people. And, I can no longer let it stand when the engineer does a bad job and he writes C architecturals.
Yeah.
Okay, so I go to the plan, and all right, then I have to find the blow up, and then I have to find the section cut through the elevation, and then it has a detail, and by the time I get down that rabbit hole, I find my answer. I used to just be happy I found my answer and move along. Well, now, it gets to a point where the person scrubbing the plans is going to ask me, hey, how did you come up with this? Because it says C architectural, and should I be clouding this? Or when you're checking it, how did you come up with this? And I've got to explain it. And now I have to go back down that rabbit hole and take you with me, or take that other person with me. And maybe I do this 3-4 times on a job, and just having my thought process of, I went to this plan, I got this from here, and you can follow that chain. And I give you the answer at the end. So you can follow the chain if you want to, but here's where the answer came from. It makes it so that we produce a much better as-built set of drawings. We have a very well marked up set of contract drawings that could be sent back in, although we never get it requested of us anymore, which is strange to me, because that used to be a huge deal. Maybe the fabricator's just sending in our final plans and that's the end of it, but it really does allow you to sort of see where something came from, and if we need to ask a question, it's obvious. It's obvious to everybody,
Yeah, and those drawings really do become our key to conversations. If we get an email that changes the drawings, we provide a link to that email, or some way of saying, okay, here's that information. It makes it so that when I get a phone call from one of our clients and they say, hey, you idiot, why did you change this base plate elevation to -6'4" when the rest of them are minus 1 foot? Well, I got an email from you on January 12th at 4 o'clock that said this, and I did that. So that's where it is. And I don't have to go dig for that, right?
Right.
And I don't then have to bother you and say, hey, where did you come up with this information?
Right. And it goes back to the specialization, too, because it used to be that I answered the emails or you answered the emails, and we were also the ones working in that job. So I would remember having that conversation, but if you have the conversation with somebody, way back when in an email, and I get that and I put it into the drawings, then, or if I have the conversation and it goes into the drawings, then you are not privy to that conversation to begin with. But when they call you about it, you look at the drawings and there's the email plastered right all over it. Oh, this is why we did this.
Right. And one of those specialization things really is project management. There's modeling, there's drafting, there's checking, and there's project management. And just like not Milton Wadhams, what was the guy's name in Office Space? Who talks to the customers so the engineers don't have to.
Yeah, I know who you're talking
Yeah, it
about.
would drive
I
me crazy.
can't-
But anyways, I talk to the customers, so the engineers don't have to. That's actually really important because just like we said before, every time your guy is changing gears, they're losing money because that's the software not being used. They're closing all their drawings. You know, even if they're not closing drawings, switching gears mentally has a cost. It takes time, and especially in the age of email where people have a thought and they poop it out into their email service immediately. There's no need for us as detailers to always respond to that instantaneously. And I've always felt this weight, right? As soon as I get an email, I feel like the necessity that needs to not only be responded to immediately, but taken care of immediately. And that's overwhelmingly not the case. And that's just something that like I've had to deal with in my head, because one of our big things is we want to have great customer service, but great customer service does not always mean instantaneous customer service. That's not a thing that we need to be providing or that our customers expect. Now, if any one of them calls me on the phone or sends an email that says I need this right away, as much as possible I'm addressing those things right away. But there's different levels of that, and I try to do a good job of splitting out those things and saying, okay, you can't, if we distract you from this, it's going to mess things up.
I think that not even too long ago, you took a phone call where we were working on getting something into the shop like within the next 20 minutes. And he says to you, you know, I'm keeping you from getting that done right now, aren't I? Like by talking to you, I am delaying getting my own drawings. Yes. Okay. He just hangs up and leaves you to work.
Yeah, and that was legitimately the case. It's like when we're in it's hit the fan mode, I jump in and we'll scrub because I can scrub faster than anybody else we have, right? Even without the specialization, just because I can instantly see what's missing and what's not missing and all of those things. But
well, and when you're the checker, who's going to argue with you?
Right. I can mark it up later. I don't have to make somebody else fix it. Oh.
What is it you always say? That's a problem for tomorrow, Matt?
Yeah.
I love hearing that phrase.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes there are choices to be made, right? Like when you know, all right, these drawings have been scheduled for approval, and I know that angle copes slightly into the joist, but does it really need to be fixed right now? No, it doesn't. Like we've got to get those out the door, get the drawings to the people, and then we'll fix that thing and get it out. But it always seems too like that those things you notice those things when it's the last possible one. I don't know what it is about deadlines. And I'd like to think that it's just you and that it's your fault. But the realism in my mind tells me that there's something about the nature of deadlines that you're going to fulfill them whether they're harsh or they're easy. So if you give yourself 2 weeks, you're going to take that full 2 weeks, especially when we're busy, right? When we're pretty much always busy.
Lately, yeah. What's it been now? 4 or 5 solid months of nonstop getting crushed.
Yeah.
And it's just trying to schedule it all and keep it all kind of put together. You know, we've wound up picking up a couple of people because of it. And I think that the way that we specialize has made it really smooth to pick up people and still continue cranking out good, solid work at a great rate.
Yeah, and we'll have to do an episode on that, on some of the specifics, some of our recommendations for training new people, because I do think we do that pretty well as far as the documenting that and then having the next person up the line train the previous person so that it's not always the most senior person conveying stuff. And one of the best ways to learn something that we've kind of learned through making these videos is by trying to teach somebody else that thing. Because if you can't verbalize, if you can't put into words why it's this way or how it's done, then you never really knew yourself. So it's a really valuable process. But we'll do that in another video. I know you're dead from your weightlifting and from your exciting weekend. I saw the bonfire got canceled, but I'm sure you did some other exciting stuff. Brought your blueberry plants in.
Yeah, now that I don't have a greenhouse.
Yeah. So that pretty much wraps up the on discussion. For the non detailing discussion, though, guys, I hope you notice. I hope that the quality's improved. I know we were away for a little bit. My instinct is to apologize, but I don't actually feel bad for it. The reasons that we were away were to make things better. We went out and we got better equipment. We've been setting up the equipment. Also, we've been working on projects for our customers. We've been super busy. That's super important to us. And I don't think we could do these videos and do them effectively if we're not actively working detailers, right? Like that's
Sure.
Nobody else understands it, and it's a problem with all of these software companies is that there's nobody working in these software companies who are actually just detailers, right? Who just tell them what's wrong with it. But we're working on that. We're hoping to continue improving that process. We'd love to hear from you guys on topics for future shows, what you need to learn about, what you need to hear about. And we're going to get more into, we wanted to shoot a video tonight that wasn't too specific or nitty gritty. There's some more ones we've got coming up. I've got one with Todd Greening from Magnus. We did a kind of live demonstration with him on the MDM software. But we talked for hours and hours, and cutting that together has been a bear. Just because one of the problems is there's nothing to cut out. It's all great information, but we have to find a way to present it to people where they can spend the little amount of time that detailers have and still be informed and get that information out. So there's that coming up. We'll have some other stuff. Obviously, I still have that handrail thing that I want to get out to. There's really good information, some stuff that I learned on handrails that I've been trying to get to. And I know, Matt, you've got a couple topics.
Well, what I'm thinking is, you've got a vacation coming up pretty soon. So, I think when I'm just not feeling like working and you're not around to, prod me along, I think I'm just going to sit down and shoot a bunch of tutorials.
Yeah. That's good. Just don't do the original Matt Hand tutorial where it was like, welcome to SDS2.
No, I'll never prepare a script again because, oh, man, I read like Stephen Hawking off a screen, man. That's just terrible.
Yeah. And it's hard to keep going and to keep talking. And I shoot little videos with my daughter where I just constantly prod her and ask her questions. She's 4 years old, and she brings her Barbie for a guest spot. It's adorable. But I tried to do the same thing with Ben, who is older and is not a constant chatterer. And like he wanted to shoot a Minecraft video, which is like all the rage, right? Like watch other people play video games. And he could not, he did not understand just how hard it is to put yourself in front of a camera and speak for 30 minutes. It's incredibly difficult.
Yeah. Now he's doing it by himself, or is he doing some kind of an interview?
Well, like I was with him, but he was supposed to be, because I don't know anything about Minecraft. Like I could play it, so I play it with him, but that's about it. Right? I have no idea any of the things. So like I kept prodding him, be like asking him leading questions and things like that. But it takes practice. So if you're still listening to our inane drudgery, we hope you're still listening. We hope we're improving. We're really trying to improve. We could use your help. Let us know if there's anything that we're doing wrong, that we can do better. We got some feedback that some people wanted it in podcast format, so we are now posting it on SoundCloud. You can go find us, the Steel Forum over there. And we're trying to separate out the two channels, or the two topics, steel detailing as a whole versus steel detailing and tutorials that are SDS2, so that the non-SDS2 detailers out there have that same ability to share their knowledge with us. So look forward to that. Look forward to hearing from you guys, and we'll see you back here on the Steel Forum.